my name is Katie and I am from TrueView Inspections. We are a home inspection company that services Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. And for those that do not know me or have never tried TrueView, I'm here today to brag a little bit about what makes us different from all the other inspection companies out there. So number one, we have immediate report delivery. We know time is of the essence in these transactions, and TrueView delivers immediate report delivery. What does this mean? Well, you will receive the report in your inbox before the inspector leaves the property. And we always joke around, you may keep them hostage until your client receives that report. I will not get fired for saying that, and the inspectors already know you can keep them there. Number two, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, a video's worth 10,000. And all our full home inspection reports come with HD pictures and videos. Adds a lot of value, especially to your client when they're trying to figure out the home and its conditions. And number three, we have 200% satisfaction guarantee. No reason not to try this out. What does this mean? Within 24 hours of receiving the report, your client is not satisfied for whatever reason, we'll not only refund their money, but we're going to go ahead and pay for a subsequent inspection up to the original value that they paid with us. Okay, so that's how confident we are in our services. We would love for you guys to give us a shot in the next inspection need. I am going to drop our email and our phone number there. But if you guys see me and you can see the QR code behind me, we have a special going on. We have an online scheduler that's available to you 24/7. And if you take out your phones and you scan that QR code, it will take you automatically to our online scheduler, which is pretty cool. And not only is it available to you 24 hours, 7 days a week, but there's a little discount code on there for your client to save a little money. So I'm going to go ahead and leave our website information and our phone number. Feel free to give us a call. We would love to help you, and have a great class. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And with that, we have Randy up next. Randy, the floor is yours. Thanks for sponsoring this class.
So hi, everybody. My name is Randy Gilbert, and I actually am the Chief Happiness Officer of Florida's title insurance company. That is my title. I used to be the CEO. I used to be the president, but I said, you know what, why not make something more apropos to that is what I do, which is I act as the liaison between you and the company. And the reason why this class was so important for me to sponsor is that I am a third generation contractor myself, and my parents were air conditioning, my grandparents concrete, my brother underground utility, I was plumbing. So we had the whole gamut covered. So I am anxious to hear and listen to everything and hear your side of the story about what, when you have the boots to the ground and what it's like over for you all. So I also like to sponsor classes, and I'm really into education. In fact, we won 2 weeks ago this beautiful Crystal Award from you all, the Miami Association of Realtors, because we've sponsored over 50 classes last year. And so we got the Affiliate of the Year, and that's pretty awesome. The other thing is that we have all these awards. What am I going to do with all these things? And so also our website, we're the national winner, in the entire country. We have the best website for title insurance, and this was given to us by the American Land Title Association, which is the governing association for all title insurance companies in the whole country. In fact, the documents that your client signed, they're all copyrighted by the American Land Title Association. So what's the benefit of using us as well? I always say, why should you give me the benefit of your attention? Well, we're attorney owned, but I'm not the one who does the closings. My brother is the one who likes to sit behind the desk. He likes to geek out and do all the transactions, and and so we're attorney owned. The other thing is that we ordered the title insurance commitments, the municipal lien churches, and the estoppels immediately. I always say, don't worry about us. If your deal cancels, my deal with my vendors are that they don't charge us. So that's why we're always going to be ahead of the curve. We're always going to be able to close much faster than anybody else who's involved in the transaction, whether it's be the mortgage broker or whomever, or the lender. So the other thing is we have a federal trademark, which is the no junk fee guarantee. One of the things that I hate in our industry is the bait and switch. We have a flat fee. It's $800 flat. But we don't charge for wires. So there's no $75 for charges for wires. There's no $100 charges for every time we send a FedEx or courier. We don't charge for notaries, for storage, or for any other ticky-tack type of fee. Your client's going to have assurances. In fact, they can even go onto our website, which I'm going to give you, and click on the calculator. They can see exactly what they're going to wind up being charged. So it's very simple, stupid, and I really like upfront fees. The other thing is that we run campaigns every month. Last month, I'm a guardian ad litem, so we raise money for Voices for children. This month is autism. Autism is for April. We do breast cancer. We do Black History Month was for the Urban Housing League. We donate $125 of our profit for every one of your closings, and then we send you a picture of us with a big check and with that 501c3, and we also send you a copy of the actual check within the memo section with your client's property address, saying if it wasn't for you, this charitable donation never would have been able to be possible. Our office, this is not a background, a Zoom background. This is actually my office. Kevin's been here. He's like, wow, I've heard you say that this is $1 million office, but he's like, this really is $1 million office. I'm also on the board of directors for the Hollywood Art and Culture Center. So that piece was actually commissioned out of Art Basel. Our entire office is filled with museum quality art. Typically your clients will be asking for a tour of the office, and we give tour of all the art that we have here. The other thing is that, like I say, it makes one hell of an impression on your clients instead of closing in a cubicle. When they come in, they're going to have a big placard that's going to say, welcome, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so to your closing. They're going to have bound books with all their information on it. They're going to have menus with their names on it. Our people have been trained by actual baristas on how to do latte art. So we don't do Nespressos. We actually sit there and grind coffee. So everything is first quality. The other good thing about us as well is that, like I said, we're really into art. So I do the welcome packages, and this is an example of what we do. I created an 88-point checklist that I check your contract against, and I do your timelines. And it's color coordinated for buyer and seller, and it's usually lengthy. It's much more comprehensive than a transactional coordinator will give you, but at least it gets everybody on the same page and points out inconsistencies and things that may not be filled out. And lastly, the other cool thing is that I'm going to wind up sending you. I'm the expert for the real estate expert for Lifestyle Magazine, and I teach classes as well. So, like I said, I love educated realtors. And currently, what I'm teaching is about how to get your offer accepted in a hot market. But every month I send out new articles on what's hot, and right now what's hot is going to be this class. So can't wait to listen.
Thanks, Randy. Your office is impressive, and what Randy didn't mention is, while he does like to collect art, he's quite the artist as well. If you're not getting his newsletter, sign up for it. He does some pretty good pieces, just to make his information a little more enlightening and nice on the eyes. So with that, two people that are also very nice on the eyes, Marcelo and the lovely President-elect Chandra Etienne. They'll be teaching this new development class today for us. So please, with no further ado, Chandra, Marcelo, please introduce yourselves, and the floor is yours.
Ladies first.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Chandra here. I'm the president-elect of Miami YPN. Let me just quickly share my screen so that we can get started. And boom. Alrighty, so I'm Chandra Etienne. I am the team leader of the core over at eXp Realty, and I am the president-elect for Miami YPN. Marcelo?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Marcelo Steinmander. I've been in the real estate industry now for almost 9 years. I work with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, EWM. I'm based here in Miami Beach, and just like Chandra, I am also part of the Miami YPN board with the Miami Association of Realtors.
So today we're just going to talk about, of course, new development and why you should get involved and do some new development sales. We're going to touch on the differences between like the single family home builders and dealing with condominiums, which are two completely different processes, very similar, but we'll be going into the differences between the two. We'll also be touching on some best practices while you're representing your customers and things to look out for. And of course, we will be giving some tips and suggestions at the end for you guys to implement into your businesses as well.
So one of the most important factors, and originally when I approached Chandra, I thought this was a great opportunity to discuss youth development. One, because it was something that I think that very few of us had discussed in the past as a class. And I thought that Chandra was a perfect person to do the class, because although I do quite a bit of youth development, it's mostly focused in the condominium aspect. So I figured Chandra was going to be the perfect person to collaborate into what it means to also do new development, but for example, more in the single family aspect of things and working with a builder and choosing the different lots. Now, if you're currently in this Zoom meeting and you are a seasoned realtor, but maybe hasn't done any new development, you may be asking yourself, why should I maybe get into new development? And there's quite a few reasons that we can touch in regards to that. One of the first ones is the obvious one, is that new development can be very lucrative. It's a very lucrative aspect of our industry. You're going to have the opportunity to work with some very high-end, at times, properties. If you happen to be in the condominium side of things, that also could include working with very notable architects and very well-known luxury developers that have been doing this for quite a few decades, like CMC Group. But another interesting point, and especially now in the seller's market, is that if, like most of us, we've been affected by a short supply of inventory, this knowing that there's opportunities out there that are beyond what might be on the MLS is going to give you an advantage when it comes to really knowing what else is out there and making sure that your buyers have a complete picture of what's on the market.
Absolutely. It's going to make it a lot easier to also break into luxury for some of you. But we'll touch on that. So to begin, we'll touch on single family home builders. When I say single family home builders, think Lennar, DR Horton, CC Homes. That's who I will be focusing on, what that process is like. And first, the most important thing is to understand the difference between our role and the role of the on-site agent. The on-site agent is an expert, yes, of the development of the homes, but they only represent the builder, okay? So they're not there, they'll help because it's their job, but they don't represent your buyer. You represent your buyer, right? So they're there to more so help with choosing out floor plans, describing the differences in the lots, help you pick premium lots, things like that. The purchase agreement process, which we'll touch on because it's completely different from the contracts that we use for traditional resales. And they work closely with like the field manager and the construction manager throughout the construction of the home. You can too, as a buyer's agent, I would suggest that you do. It is always best that you are present and have some sort of a relationship with the field and construction manager, but essentially the on-site agent is there for the builder. Oh, whoops. Now, it's interesting because I guess from like the buyer's side, a lot of times they think, well, if there's someone there, the homes are there, there's an agent that's working there, why do I still need you to come and represent me? And it's important for us to be able to explain to buyers that, listen, the on-site agent represents the builder, not you, right? We're there to help you. And it's usually free for us to represent the buyer as long as we actually go and sign in. We'll touch on that as well. Our commission is typically paid by the builder as well. And it's a completely different process when compared to traditional resales. An experienced agent would know what to negotiate as well. Going to, let's say, Lennar and trying to negotiate on price is going to be very difficult. However, an experienced agent would know, okay, you know what, maybe we can negotiate on some finishes, or maybe on some credits to, you know, get a washer and dryer or something like that. The builder is usually set on their price. They don't usually negotiate on that. And having a buyer understand or have an experienced agent represent them who understands what can be negotiated will be very, very beneficial for them, help them save money and potentially even make money in the future, because we'll even know what upgrades they should invest in their home. So with that being said, though, the on-site agent and us as the buyer's agent, we work closely together in order to get everything done seamlessly and as efficiently as possible for our buyer, right? So we represent the buyer acting on their behalf and looking out for their best interest. We understand their budget. We understand their wants and needs. The on-site agent understands more of the community, the process, the construction process, any delays with permits or things like that. That's basically their job, right? And it's very important for us to work like as a partnership to ensure that the buyer has the best experience ever. So it's not just on-site agent or buyer's agent. It's the two of us together in order to be the best team possible for the buyer. And this is another one, additional costs. So myself with buyers, I always do a buyer's consultation with my buyers. And one thing that I always tell them is, if you're looking to buy new construction, there are usually other costs associated with that. Traditionally, a resale can, you know, closing costs, maybe not in this market, but in a very stable market, an equal market, you know, a buyer's closing costs can range between 3 and 4%, not including their down payment. However, with these builders, sometimes their closing costs are closer to 5%, right? Another thing too is most of these models have the biggest upgrades, the highest level upgrades, and these are not standard. Some of the builders come with the yards fenced, some don't. Some come with granite, some come with travertine, some come, like they're all completely different. And usually what's in the model home are upgrades. You have some that don't even come with washer and dryer. You have others that come with carpet standard. So it's very important to understand that typically when a buyer is going to purchase new construction, it will cost them a little more. And again, I mentioned that closing costs do tend to be a little higher because of builder's fees. There's pros and cons to everything. And that's why I'll touch on the financing as well. And usually the construction site, or I should say the builder, has a partnership with a title company and a lender. And it's very important for buyers to understand that it is not required for them to use the builder's lender. And I see it all the time where the on-site sales agent is going to push and say that the buyer must use their in-house lender. Like, you can't do that. That's kind of illegal. You can't make buyers use anybody specific. However, they may still be required to at least get pre-qualified with them, but it's not required to. And the reason why this is a big topic of conversation when it comes to buyers going with new construction is because the relationship that the lender has with the builder typically does have some incentives tied into that for the buyer. So although it may cost more out of pocket to purchase new construction, they usually have some sort of financial incentive tied to the in-house lender. So sometimes that means that they'll get more credits towards upgrades, or they might get some or all of their closing costs paid for. And this varies depending on the market. Right now, it's a hot seller's market, so incentives are not as hot. Usually towards the end of build outs, they usually offer the best incentives because they're trying to close out on homes that are already built that they would like to cash out on. And I really wanted to touch on this because last week, I believe there was a whole discussion on Facebook about this because this agent the on-site agent would not let this buyer's agent move forward unless they went with their in-house lender. And I think it's really important for people to understand that it is not required, that buyers do have a choice of who they can use to purchase. Marcelo, do you want to touch on this at all?
I mean, I think it's disgusting when they're trying to, if for an on-site agent to try to make it that it's a must, but and I'm glad that you mentioned that. Now, what have you seen in your experience in your side of the market when it comes to concessions at this time, at least over the past 1 or 2 quarters, if you don't mind me asking?
They're very little. The most I've seen is about 1% towards buyers' closing costs if they use the in-house lender. Some of them are even cutting back on our commission. Some of them are just paying a flat fee. Some of them are, which is okay. Technically, there is no standard on our commission, right? But it's a seller's market right now. And the builders know that they don't have to incentivize as much as they used to in order to have buyers come and buy. Like, the market is in their favor. So what used to be, 3% towards closing costs, or pay all of the closing costs if you close within 30 days, or if a buyer were to pick certain lots that were remaining, if they were to pick those and go with the in-house lender, then their closing costs would be paid and things like that. I'm not really seeing as much of that. DR Horton, especially down south, like in Homestead, they probably have some of the best incentives that I've seen for the past 2 quarters.
So just like any real estate market, it's all local in nature.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yep. So compensation. In most cases, the builder will only pay a disclosed percentage of the home's base price and not pay any commissions on lot premiums, structural upgrades, landscaping, and design center options. What this means is, let's say, for example, you have a buyer who's under contract for a new construction home for $400,000, but they have $30,000 worth of upgrades, closing costs, incentives, and things like that. Technically, your commission would be paid on the percentage agreed upon at $370,000, not at $400,000, because they deduct all of the upgrades and the lot premiums and all of that. So that's really important to note that. And you want to make sure that you clarify that in advance with the on-site agent. Unfortunately, I've dealt with some that mess up when it comes to filling out, because everything's basically like on an Excel sheet. And they're just plugging in numbers. And you just want to make sure that you go through that with them and they actually put in the commission amount, because what's on that contract, what they put in, like, it's set. It's very hard for them to change anything after the fact. Usually they can't. And that's why it's also really important too. The only way that you will typically get paid is if you're there at that first appointment. So if you have a buyer who's like, oh, I'm interested in that, Campobello Lennar community in Homestead, don't tell them like, oh, go check it out and let me know what you think. They won't pay you, because once that buyer goes in, they're going to fill out a form. They're going to register the client or the buyer. If they're there unrepresented, then it's going to be very hard, if not impossible, for you to get paid, because technically the buyer was unrepresented at that time, right? So when it comes to commissions, usually the best time and the most lucrative times are when the development is selling too slowly, or they have too many completed spec homes in inventory and they want to sell some of the homes that they already have built. If the market is declining, if we were experiencing like the opposite of what we're experiencing right now, incentives would be a lot higher, not just for the buyers, but typically for us as well. It wasn't uncommon at one point to have a builder say, hey, if you bring a buyer that closes within the next 45 days, then we pay you 4% commission plus a $3,000 bonus, plus you have a $2,000 credit that you can give to your buyer. And of course, if the builder is closing out on the development, Usually at this time, they have some homes that were already built, and for whatever reason, those buyers weren't able to close, and they're just trying to get rid of them as quickly as possible. So the compensation and incentives to us as agents tends to be a little bit more appealing. So that's just a little something to keep in mind. What about yourself, Marcelo? Do you see anything like that when it comes to the condos?
Yes and no. So
Okay.
typically when it comes to the commissions, I mean, it's going to be set on the gross final price. Obviously, it depends on who the developer is. You want to make sure you have open communication with the sales agent so that they're disclosing these things to you. And then also the same way that you have to disclose other things to the buyer in regards to how the property is being delivered. But in regards to compensation, the answer is yes. If it's a developer closeout and the building is, let's say, approaching a fully sold out aspect, let's say they're in the 90% threshold already, they're going to try to make it more lucrative in order to appeal for more agents to present the property to their buyers and try to get rid of the property as soon as possible. When the development is selling too slowly, that applies as well. And then last but not least, once you have a relationship with the developer, let's say if you brought multiple properties and you've already done several sales in, let's say, the same building, as a brokerage, I have seen cases where they'll give, let's say, a bonus to that particular agency or to that particular agent because, let's say, they enjoy working with him or her, or that particular company has already sold, quite a bit. So it's almost like a thank you so much. Here's a little bonus for your hard work and effort, which obviously is always greatly appreciated.
That's important you mentioned that, because when it comes to real estate in general, right, it's all about the relationships. And that's why it's also so important to have good relationships with these on-site sales agents, right? Because sometimes if it's a hot community or a hot building or something and it sells quickly, it's going to be a little harder for your buyer to get in, or maybe they can't at all. If something does fall through, you want to be the first person that they call too, like, hey, this lot just came available, or this unit was not able to close. At that point, your buyer might not be able to pick finishings and things like that, but at least they're getting in, or at least they have the opportunity to get in. So relationships is everything, even with these builders.
In the new development community, it's a very small community. The new development brokerage companies, everybody for the most part knows one another, and they're gonna know how, and they always enjoy sharing notes because they want to see how each development is doing, and they exchange notes and suggestions to see what they can do better. The same thing goes in terms of relationships. You want to make sure that you are always treating them with respect, and that you find a good on-site sales agent when we're working with them. Because if you're enjoyable to work with, if there's ever a default or if a property falls through, they're going to keep you in mind because they're going to see you as somebody who they can, do business with, and it's going to be smooth. There's not going to be a difficulty. So that's very, very important in this particular, it's very important, period, if you're a realtor in regardless of any market, but it's particularly important when you're working new development here in South Florida.
Absolutely. And they tend to increase prices often. So it's always good to get a heads up too, from them. And they can call you and say like, hey, next week we plan on increasing the prices by, 1% or by 20,000 or whatever it may be. If you have anybody interested, let's bring them in now so we can lock them in now. So relationships is everything. I briefly touched on this already, but basically the builders will only pay us a commission if they determine that we were really the procuring cause and we were the ones who initially brought the buyer to them. So that means if you're working with a buyer right now and let's say they've been to the community before or have been to the development before and they've already registered and you're not there as their agent, it's going to be really hard to get compensated, probably impossible to get compensated because you weren't the procuring cause. So just keep that in mind too, especially if you're working with buyers. Ask them, hey, have you ever visited a new construction site? Have you visited anything? Like I had a consultation where unfortunately the buyer had actually went to a new development way down in Homestead. And although she's not, or her and her husband are not going to purchase at that community, it's also one of the builders who bought out everybody. So it's going to be very hard for me to get them into another community and get compensated because they're already registered there. Even if it was 6 months ago, they were already registered there unrepresented. So the purchase contract, crucial. The contracts are completely different from the traditional resale, contracts that we use during resales. There can be 50 pages long, 80 pages long or more. They're traditionally written to just protect the builder. When it comes to like the single family home builders, traditionally the only thing that I see in there that protects the buyer is a financing contingency. Like that's really it. It's typically written by the builder's attorney and has minimal consideration for your buyer. So it's mainly comprised of things that are not necessarily going to protect your buyer, but simply protect the builder. And another thing to keep in mind too is there's rarely a definitive date. So like in a resale, we have a closing date deadline, right? So with new construction, it's typically an estimated closing date. And the contracts are usually written where, if the builder takes a lot longer than necessary, sometimes a year or even 2 years, the buyer has to wait. It's really that simple. It's very hard for buyers to back out unless they're getting financing in which they have a financing contingency in place. So you want to make sure that you look out for certain things in the contract. Make sure that there's no, or look out for things as, for example, increases in purchase price in the future. I personally haven't necessarily seen that. What I mean by that is, let's say your buyer's already under contract on a home for 500,000, and then 4 months later, the home's not built yet. They've started, but the home's not completed yet. But now the developer wants to increase the purchase price by $40,000. I haven't personally seen that here in Miami. However, I've been talking to some agents in some other markets, and they're starting to see where now the builders are increasing the prices. And it basically says, hey, if the buyer doesn't want to move forward with this new increased price, then we will refund them their escrow deposit, and we will refund them any costs that were incurred by them, let's say for an appraisal or anything like that, in order for them to purchase, and even pay them extra. What I've seen is $500 to the buyer in order for them to cancel the contract if they no longer want to move forward. Again, it's a seller's market, and the builders are having a little bit more, the market's in their favor. So they can get away with things like this now. Again, I personally haven't seen it happen. This is just what I've seen, what I've spoken to other agents about in other markets. You want to make sure that you can see how long construction delays can be without penalty to the builder. It's not uncommon to see delays for up to 2 years written in the contract. So if you go under contract today and you have an estimated close date for, let's say, 7 months from now, but it's now December and your house isn't ready yet, technically the contract probably has somewhere in there that like, oh, well, you're just going to have to wait. And then you want to look for any contingencies that are actually in place to protect the buyer. Again, typically it's usually just the financing contingency. What about yourself, Marcelo?
So what, no, I haven't, I haven't seen the escalation on price clause on any paperwork on my side of things. But going back to what you said earlier, these contracts are, it's going to depend on the stage of the construction, whether it's still in pre-construction, if it's not even in pre-construction phase and it's only taking reservations, like certain projects that are yet to maybe break ground, or it may be new construction, meaning that you can already go and actually see the unit or see the residence, and then you just have to figure out the terms. So that's going to depend on as to the length of the contract. Some builders, particularly spec homes, may actually even come back and say, we can use a traditional 4-bar contract and then just issue a builder's warranty, which does have a section in the 4-bar. So it's going to depend on the stage. What I typically always tell my customers, unequivocally, with very little exception, is that if they do not understand anything as to the purchase contract itself, I always recommend that they hire a real estate attorney just to overview it. And chances are they're going to have to hire a real estate attorney anyways, because typically, at least on my side of the coin, there's always going to be little factors like parking or storage or finishes that are going to have to be negotiated and that are going to be included in a separate addendum that comes alongside and that supersedes the purchase contract. And those little minuscule things, such as the schedule of the deposit and whether you want your parking side to side or tandem, always has to be in writing, and you want to make sure that you don't miss a single point. That's, for me, that's probably one of the biggest values one can bring as a buyer's agent when it comes to actually negotiating the agreement.
Absolutely. It's so interesting hearing like the little details, when it comes to the condos. So inspection and walkthrough. Usually the builder will have some sort of a construction team or a contracting team that's there on site, and they will give you what's called like a walkthrough, or the buyer, what's called a walkthrough. They typically say you don't need your own inspector, but I always recommend buyers to have their own inspector go out to the property anyway, because you just never, ever know. They usually just have the buyer go around with some blue tape, and you quote unquote blue tape all the issues that you can visually see. But sometimes, there are some things that are just not obvious to the naked eye, even with new construction, even with brand new homes. I've found in previous instances where for whatever reason, the water pressure wouldn't work in the master, right? In the master's shower, or the sink, the kitchen sink, the hot water wasn't working, but just in the kitchen sink, things like that. So you still want to have your own inspector go out there. What I tell buyers is this is the biggest financial investment that they're probably going to make in their lifetime. So what's a couple $100 more to have somebody come out there and make sure that everything is done properly. The inspection for new construction, this like final walkthrough is typically done just days before closing. So again, the closing date is estimated. So if they say, hey, you want to come out for your walkthrough tomorrow, that usually means that closing is around the corner, usually within days, fingers crossed. So everything should be done on the house. And then sometimes the builder will provide a warranty. Typically it's a year, but again, it really depends on the builder and what's included in the home. Some builders just give you walls, other builders give you a full blown out smart home. So the warranties will vary, and all of that would be in the purchase contract. What about you, Marcelo?
I have seen, some of my colleagues, I have seen them be a little bit more lenient when it comes to the inspection, especially since it's, they treat it as new construction and it's just a condo. That's fine. It's their customer. So, I'm never going to tell a colleague what to do or what not to do. If they ask for my suggestion, I'm going to tell them that you should still inspect the property. I usually do the walkthrough / punch list either the day before the closing or actually on the day of the closing, since it doesn't take long. And I usually just tell my customers to treat it as a regular home inspection. It's not going, if there's issues that are found, it's not going to provide cause to delay the closing, but the builder's going to have a representative there that's going to prepare a final punch list that's going to be provided. And basically at a certain point, even sometimes during prior to the closing or while the closing is taking place, they're probably going and sending and taking care of things. This could be things as minuscule as cleaning, or it could be something as major as a cooktop or an appliance, or even the water pressure not working properly. So, do you have to necessarily use blue tape? No, but you at least want to take pictures and you want to make sure that you're pointing out every single detail. And there's really not much to lose. Especially if it's a multi-million-dollar transaction, what's there to lose if you have to spend, a couple $100 to just have an inspector go and take a look and make sure that everything is functioning. And some of these appliances, they can be quite expensive to repair. If you don't mention something, the builder's not going to do anything about it. You're using that time as a buyer to do your due diligence. So I always tell them and suggest them to use it wisely.
Absolutely. And another reason why the buyers still need us. For example, I had a buyer, they were buying FHA. And when we went for our walkthrough, there was no floors on the first floor. Like, they didn't install flooring. And we were like, where's the flooring? And the construction manager was like, oh no, you guys don't have any flooring. And I said, that makes no sense. How can we close without flooring? This is an FHA buyer. And he showed me the printout, because they always have a printout. The construction crew always has a printout on the property of what is going into the property, what's being installed, the finishings and everything. And he was right. The printout that he had did say that flooring was not going to be installed. However, that printout did not belong to my client. It belonged to a villa 2 doors down. And for whatever reason, it was taped into our unit. So, and what's crazy is I was going back and forth with this man, and he did not want to listen to me. And the sales agent, I got her on the phone, and she emailed me the most recent copy of what they had. And literally there was a time, like, it was what she emailed me showed the type of tile that was supposed to be installed. And then when I looked at the date stamp, it was literally, or the time stamp of that sheet, mine was like 12 or 13 minutes, updated 12 or 13 minutes after the one that the construction team had taped in the house. So if I wasn't there and I didn't even notice that and didn't go back and forth with these people for like a good hour and a half, my buyers would have closed on a house without any floors.
Can you close without flooring on FHA?
No, you need flooring.
That's so, I mean, but you still could have closed without it? Or is that what the issue would have been? Is that what the issue would have been, that the lender would have denied an underwriting because there was no flooring?
Technically, because of the way where we were in the process already, I don't even think the lender would have even known that flooring wasn't even there yet. Because while we were doing the walkthrough, the appraiser also came in, because they were using the in-house lender, right? So the appraiser came in at the same time, walked around for his minute and a half and left.
Yeah.
So everything would have been fine. The only thing is my clients would have closed on a house, got keys to a house that didn't have floors.
Got it.
That's what would have happened, all because of a mix-up, and a very innocent mix-up. But the thing is, when it comes to new construction, especially with some of these developers and one that's basically buying everybody out here in South Florida, they are very cookie cutter. They're putting the same exact thing in every home. So sometimes they're making mistakes based off of what they're doing on every other home down that same block, not realizing that your client has something different. Now, it is possible to close on a home without the floors installed. I've had clients do that in the past, because the finishings, when you pick it with the builder, it's always at a premium. So it's like, well, if you're going to change the floors after, don't even have floors installed. Yeah, who cares? Just close without floors and pick yours after. Right. So yeah, another reason why it's so important for buyers to have us involved in the process when they are purchasing new construction. And now we're going to focus more on condominiums, and you guys will be able to hear Marcelo's amazing voice more than mine.
Well, thank you. So when it comes to condominiums, I mean, there's going to be some key differences, but what you're going to notice is that there's several aspects that are very similar to single family, but I'm going to go over the nuances. And there's also practices that I personally have used that, in my opinion, are going to make it a little bit easier to handle the inventory when it comes to new construction. Now, for me, the biggest why, when I started getting involved with some of the projects that are currently out there, is that if you haven't noticed, we are rapidly diversifying as a market. We are becoming very lucrative. We are becoming a global destination. And with that comes new inventory, new projects, new developers, and also new architects. So if you have a passion for architecture, if you have a passion for, just extravagant, then you want to at least get to know the new construction condo realm, because it's going to give you the opportunity to work with very diverse teams of people and very diverse visions in terms of what a South Florida property can be. At the moment, we have it not, we have the cycle we have over the past 10 years has been less than the cycle that we saw probably between 2000 and 2008 on the previous cycle. But what you'll notice is that the architecture is different. And I mean, things have really taken a turn for the star architect approach. And I mean, for me, wanting to be a part of that market, it was a no-brainer. So you can go to the next slide if you want. Some examples of what I'm referring to right now is, we just had, how do I get a list of new developments? So we'll go over the different places where you can get a list of new developments. Thanks for asking. But, it wouldn't be a new development presentation if I don't mention, for example, the newly released Waldorf Astoria, which is was just announced by PMG, which they're based out of New York. It's going to be the first project in Miami that's going to be at over 1,000 feet. To me, it's surprising that we haven't had a project over 1,000 feet, and we've had places like LA had a 1,000-footer high rise since the 1980s. But the main example is that they're going to be quite diverse, so it's going to require a different set of skills. Now, the main difference when it comes to working in new development condos rather than single family is that, unlike on a builder site where everything is horizontal and the building, it could be built in phases and you could pick the lot, developers in condominiums are going to require a certain percentage of units already sold or under reservation before they break ground. And that really depends on whether they need bank financing so that they can do the construction, construction loan. In some cases, they might not need it, but it's still good business practice to have a certain percentage of units already under contract. So the norm is obviously going to differ depending on the pockets of the developer, but I've seen on average anywhere between 30 to 40% before they break ground. Other developers, they may not require financing and they'll start building the project without any financing whatsoever. Two good examples of that is Monat Terrace by JDS. I think that they had less than 35% on their contract and they already have broken ground and work in building. And then Arte in Surfside, which is a 16-unit boutique project that was built and it was completed without any properties under contract. So again, you may not break ground until they have a certain amount of numbers. It depends on the developer. And you are going to have differences in regards to what the fees are going to be and what comes with the property. And that also depends on the developer. Some developers and some floor plans, they may come designer ready, meaning that you're going to have a property that's ready for someone to come in and install their own floors, their own closets, and do their own finishes when it comes to light fixtures and window treatments. Other developers, they're gonna offer you the property fully finished, meaning that you will have flooring and you may choose a different type of flooring, but you're not probably gonna have closets. You're probably not going to have custom light fixtures or custom doors. And you're also not gonna have window treatments. Typically, that's going to come for the buyer to pick themselves. And then in other cases, it's going to be just a raw box. And I have seen that typically on projects where it's maybe a bigger unit, like a penthouse, where chances are the buyer is going to want to bring their own team of interior designers or builders so that they can finish it to their taste. Now, when it comes to working with the on-site agent, just like on working on single family, you want to find an on-site agent that you get along with, that clearly understands the product that he or she is selling. And you want to be able to have some kind of chemistry with them, because this person is going to be essential to making sure that you get information in a timely manner on each development, so that you can better inform your customers. So in the same way that a agent on a building site might know which are the best floor plans or the best sites and lots, on condos, it's going to come down to the different lines in the building and where the key plans are going to be, how many elevators are going to come in the building, the level of parking, what the dollar per square foot is going to be on the maintenance fee. So the better informed that they are, the better informed that you'll be. And definitely be loyal to that on-site agent, because chances are, if they are working as an on-site agent, it means that they're, for the most part, chances are they know what they're doing, and they're going to be devoting some time to educate you in hopes that you're going to bring a customer over to the development. Always be very open when you're speaking with them. If your buyer has a specific taste, or if your buyer has a specific want and need, make sure that you mention it before you do the showing. In some cases, I actually even go to the project the day before the showing, or hop on a phone call with them just to better explain what the situation is. And then we don't, let's say, waste time looking at 10 different units that may not work. And instead we focus on 2 or 3 different floor plans. You're gonna save time, you're gonna save your buyer's time, and then you're also gonna save their time, which they're gonna greatly appreciate. So a couple of tips and suggestions. I mean, when you start working with new development, you're going to have all kinds of different brochures, fact sheets, renderings, approved pictures, approved marketing. You're going to have different price lists. So you're going to need to have a box or a place where you can store all this information. I don't work for Dropbox. I'm not getting paid by Dropbox to say what I'm about to say, but for the most part, industry-wide, Dropbox is the software or app that most development teams use when it comes to sharing information about the project. I highly recommend that, first of all, you have an account, and then second of all, you have a new development folder, and then subfolders for each different project, and include as much information as you can, because that information and those brochures and fact sheets is going to be what you're going to require so that you can present and pitch these different projects, whether through email marketing or social media marketing, or if you're doing a presentation to a group of potential investors or customers. Keep these and also save them for resale use. So 10 years from now, 15 years from now, or whenever, if they're ready to sell, guess what? You're one of the few agents that still has the original developer floor plans, fact sheets, and marketing that you can then utilize when it's time for you to play listing agent and sell the property. Touching base again, when it comes to working effectively with the on-site agent. If you don't have a good relationship with that particular agent, by all means, find a different agent that you get along with better. There's always typically several agents within each team, especially if it's a big development with hundreds of units. Find one that you get along with, find one that you can look in the eye and you can trust, because you're going to need this person to have, you need to work hand in hand with this person to make sure that you as the buyer's agent have what they need to succeed. Make sure you do your homework about the buyer, and that way when it's time to do the presentation or do the showing, they already know what the buyer's preferences are, if they're afraid of heights, if they want this particular view, if they prefer a finished unit, if they want something turnkey. Make sure you bring as much, I don't want to say ammunition, but you want to make sure that you have as much information as you can before you go into your presentation. They're going to appreciate it. When it comes, see, when I wrote this slide and when it came to sound judgment, keep in mind that when you're doing new development and you're working pre-construction, you're working with different developers. Some of them may be more experienced than other developers. It may be their first project in Miami. Other times they are seasoned developers that have been a part of the city skyline since the 1980s. They're going to come with different finishes. They're going to have different reputations. So it is entirely up to you as a real estate professional to make sure that you know what you're selling and that you're practicing sound judgment when it comes to presenting different projects to different customers. For example, if your customer is looking for a second home and they want a relaxing getaway, it's going to be fairly safe to assume that they may not want a project that's maybe Airbnb friendly, or that's not going to have certain amenities. So make sure that you do your homework on the particular project. Do not waste your buyer's time, and do not waste your time pitching something that might not be a potential fit. And that's why you have to come in and you have to go ahead and visit the different sales centers and really get to know the different buildings and the different units and what comes with it and what doesn't come with it. If your customer wants a large unit, some buildings do, especially high rises, are not going to come with 3 or 4 bedroom floor plans, and they only come in 1 or 2. If they want a 4 or 5 bedroom unit, guess what? You need to show them a different project that's going to feature larger units. And then, Chandra mentioned quite clearly the pitfalls of not putting things in writing. Everything from the parking to the number of parking spaces, to whether you want 24 by 48 travertine tile or 24 by 24 tile installed prior to closing, if it comes finished or unfinished, if the price includes furniture or no furniture. You want to make sure that you get these in writing, and that when you're presenting the offer, when negotiating, you don't forget to mention anything, because typically the way inside sales agents work, they're going to copy paste your offer, and that's what's going to be presented to that developer. Meaning that if you forget to say that the buyer has one, let's say hypothetically the buyer wants 2 parking spots. If you forget to say that the buyer wants them side to side, they may assume that they want the parking to be tandem. And if the deposit that they're asking is, let's say 30%, if you don't say that you're only putting 5% down and then the balance at closing, they're also assuming that after the 15-day right of rescission, there's going to be 30% of the purchase price already in escrow at whichever title company or law firm is doing the closing. So this is where you have to be sitting with your buyer and make sure that they tell you everything that they want out of the property. And with that kind of detail in mind, not only are you going to be providing better service, but you're going to be actually selling what they're expecting. For sending new development, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Make sure that you use the brochures, the fact sheets, and all the information that is provided to you. If you actually go by what they're giving you, not only are you being loyal to the vision of whatever development property is, but this is how you can also make sure that you're being informative on your presentations, that you don't give out the wrong number of units or the wrong dollar per square foot. And it's also you're also gonna come across as more professional in that manner, because that way, if somebody asks you how many units are available in 1000 Museum, or how many units were delivered, instead of saying, oh, I don't know, and let me find out, you can actually say 83 units, and it's on a 1-acre lot. So make sure you study and you actually go over the different units and different properties. If you're not sure about the property, or if you're still not fully yet educated on the project, don't talk about it yet. That's probably what I would recommend.
So someone asked earlier where they can find these projects, these new development projects, condo buildings, all of that. And Miami Realtors has a ton of products and services that they offer to us, some of which are resources for us to find these new construction sites, these new developments. We have Proxio, which is basically an international marketing system for all of these projects, not just here in Miami, but across the country and across the world. These developers share their developments on Proxio, and they give us all of the marketing on there. If you haven't checked it out, definitely do. New Home Source Professional is basically a companion for the MLS, where we're able to search all of the new construction homes. Buildersupdate.com is the same. All of these services can be found on our Miami dashboard. Same place you log into the MLS. You should have these on there. They're absolutely amazing. You can filter by location, property size, all the specs that your client would need, your customer would need. You can search it just like that, as if you're searching the MLS, except it's buildings and single family homes and new construction. So definitely look into these products and services that's provided by Miami Realtors.
Okay.
And with that said, I believe that is it, unless anybody has any questions for us.
I know that there was a question earlier regarding attorneys, but I didn't really read it fully.
Let me see, there was. Someone asked if this presentation can be emailed after. These classes should be all on Miami Live. So
It'll be on
Miami
YouTube
Live
for sure.
and on YouTube. Miami Realtors has a YouTube channel that has all of our classes that we have been doing, and it'll be there as well.
Yep, and if I'll send the video and the presentation to everyone who's registered for the class.
Let me see. Gabe asked, how much do attorneys usually charge buyers for the review? I'm assuming the review of the contract. I typically see about $350. I've seen $5, but
I've seen anywhere between $300 all the way to $1,000, depending on whether it's only to review it or if the attorney actually has to draft out, let's say, the wording for the addendum for the terms that have to be added on to the purchase contract.
mm-hmm. How do you guys recommend we find buyers for these new developments? They tend to be, as you said, usually luxury. There's a ton of new construction sites that are not not luxury. It would really depend on where you're servicing, right? So down south and up north, like South Dade, North Broward, Central Broward, they tend to be a little bit more affordable, or not luxury, I should say, but it really depends on your client. We did provide that list of resources. I would go on there, and you'll be able to find a ton of new construction sites that are not luxury.
Like,
was it, I've sold villas for like $220. Right. Go ahead, Marcelo, sorry.
What was the question? How to find buyers?
How to find the buyers for these new developments?
I mean, the sky's the limit. I mean, just, you're gonna, again, once you have the information from the developer, you're going to have renderings, brochures, fact sheets. Sometimes it comes in different languages. So the sky really is the limit. I've seen certain buyers agents and certain realtors that I know actually go to their native countries and they actually do presentations to a group of investors, and they actually announce that they're going to be in a certain hotel or in a certain convention center to do a presentation on different projects in Miami. They'll do it alongside an accountant or an immigration attorney, and they actually go out there and they present these projects. And before that, they make sure that they get all their fact sheets and all their brochures in the respective language of the place that they're going. I've seen people do social media. I've seen people do, I do a lot of email marketing, and we send it, and we, so you just want to start talking about it and know that you're talking about it, and knowing what to talk about. And typically buyers are going to see that when people relate that you're the person that does this, they're going to naturally gravitate towards you because they know that you're the person to talk to that has that information.
So somebody asked, in order to cut closing costs, do you recommend you advise your buyer to look for their own lender instead of using the builder's lender? What about the title company? When it comes to these new construction sites for like single family homes, they usually have an in-house title company as well. I will say that typically I will have my buyers use the in-house title company simply because they have a closer connection and better communication with the construction team. And it's very important that they're on the same page when it comes to certificate of reoccupancy, permit issues, all of that. I need them to, be able to communicate. The fees are sometimes a little higher but not too crazy when it comes to title. If the buyer is concerned, then again, I would just have them have their own attorney review. But in order to cut costs, it usually costs more to have the buyer use their own lender instead of using the in-house lender. The in-house lender does typically offer some sort of incentive because the builder themselves usually has some sort of a relationship or ownership or something like that. So they incentivize the buyers to use them. So not using the lender does not help the buyer save money. It usually helps them save money if they use the builder's lender.
Condos is different.
Well,
Condos,
yeah, you can touch on that.
Yeah, condos is they don't even do, they don't, chances are some developers, especially those that have done single family and have maybe are now doing condos like Alta, who just did Quadra Design District, they'll have a partnership with an in-house lender and basically pre-approve the building through that bank or that particular lender. Other developers, and this is my personal approach, what I personally prefer, is they'll have the whole building Fannie Mae approved. And then they'll provide the Fannie Mae approval questionnaire and any funding research that they did to whomever the buyer is using as a lender. And then that way, doesn't matter who the lender is, the buyer can use that particular lender, and then they basically still make it subject to financing. So Canvas, for example, when they were finishing their closeout over in Edgewater, that's something that they did particularly. And Brickell Flatiron, not for only a portion of the building, they also got it Fannie Mae approved.
You know, it can be like that with like the single family home builders as well. If your buyer does decide to use their own lender, again, they can choose whoever they want. They're just usually incentivized to use the in-house lender. The only thing that the outside lender, if the buyer would want to use their own lender, that they would ask for is to make sure that there is a CO, so a certificate of occupancy. And that's where things are just completely, the process that you would have with a traditional financing to buy or resale is just completely different when it comes to these new constructions. So again, like I mentioned earlier, the appraisal was being done the day we were doing our walkthrough, which was like 2 days before closing. You know, in a resale, it's not like that. Usually, you know, if you have a good lender, it's done within the first 2 weeks, you know, first week, if your lender has an in-house team of everybody. So it's just completely different. They can use their own lender, but again, the process is different and they would need a CO because there needs to be a structure there, especially if your buyer's, you know, like an FHA buyer, you know, doing conventional 3, 5, or 10% down or something like that. There needs to be a structure there. So just keep that in mind. If you do have a buyer that's like, well, I want to just use my lender, it's very important to understand the difference within the processes for the different lenders.
Okay, there's two more questions. Are you sorry, Sean, didn't mean to cut you off. Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
So I do want to give one correction. When I said that sometimes they don't incentivize, or I should say two other incentives that buyers can sometimes get, especially if, let's say, the community is still under construction and it's supposed to be gated. And let's say the HOA was supposed to be like $200 a month or something, but the community is going to be under construction for the next like 1.5 years or something. Sometimes you can negotiate on the monthly HOA fee. Sometimes it can be waived for the first year, or it can be cut for some time or until like the gate is up or something like that. And sometimes the taxes as well. So those are like little things that sometimes can be negotiated. Other than that, the purchase price of new construction usually cannot be. But go ahead, Kevin. Sorry about that.
Okay, no, don't be. I cut you off. Okay, so just a few questions that have popped up in the chat since you guys talked. For a condo development, are buyers guaranteed to get the unit they contracted with? Mina has heard about a story that a developer changed the unit at closing. So that's the first question. And then James asked, do you have a list of questions ready that we should ask the developer to protect the client? And there's yeah, we'll start with those. I think those are the questions.
Okay, so the first question, I mean, I've heard horror stories And that's why I go back and I say the same thing. Make sure that you read the purchase contract and make sure that the developer doesn't reserve the right to make an adjustment on which unit it is. Like, for example, instead of selling you 1905, they sell you 1705 because somebody wanted to combine 1905 and 1904 or something like that. So, I mean, as far as I'm aware, I mean, I've never had that issue, especially in pre-construction, but I'm naturally a person that I'm naturally a suspicious person. So this is the part where I would also make sure, and if that particular buyer wants a particular unit, then make sure that that unit cannot be, that the unit number cannot be transferred. And that would apply especially on situations where there's still plenty of inventory left to sell or the building hasn't been fully built yet.
And then the list of questions.
And then the second question is, I mean, it really it depends on the project, but you want to go based on the fact sheet and see what's included, and then whatever's not included on the fact sheet that it's important to know is you typically want to know what's included on the price in terms of the delivery of the unit, if it's being delivered finished, unfinished, if it's going to be raw or designer ready. You want to know, especially on condos, what the dollar per square foot is on the maintenance fee and what's included, what the rental restrictions are going to be, if it's going to be an investor that's potentially buying this unit to rent it out. You want to know about the view. If you're buying something that may potentially get obstructed, you want to get an idea of what the view is. Some developers are very good at that, and they'll actually put a drone up in the air and give you an estimate of what the view is going to look like based on a certain height. But I mean, it's quite a bit to mention. That would be a great resource to have. Unfortunately, I don't have it, but I think that with experience, you just naturally start knowing what to ask and what not to ask, depending on the presentation and how it's going.
Well put, Marcelo. Any other questions before we go? If anybody wants to hop on camera, if not, we'd love some final words from our sponsors, Randy and Katie. They're still on. I see Randy's on there. And then we'll send you on your way. So before I send it over to Randy, does anybody else have any questions? Thanks for the comment, James. All right, Randy, any final words?
The only thing I can comment on was somebody asked about whether or not a property was swapped out with another by a developer. I can tell you that my former law partner actually litigated a case where the developer won it, and the developer was allowed to switch out the property, a condo unit, for a like-kind property. Buyer refused to close, and the developer went after the buyer's $100,000 and some odd deposit. Developer won. Buyer was required to close. It was contractual. A lot of these questions that I see in here, they're just, you all are used to what's customary in the industry. You're used to, well, doesn't the seller always pay for the doc stamps, and doesn't this always happen? No, everything's contractual. We may have customs in the industry, and if you go to other counties, the custom's different. Like you've seen in your contract, the Miami-Dade provision. That's because the buyer is used to paying for closing, for the title insurance, for instance. But if you go to other counties, it's the seller. So the basis of people's rights are mostly going to be found in the contract. So somebody asked, how much is it going to cost for an attorney to read a contract? Don't hire an attorney who's going to read your contract for $300 or $500, because those contracts are usually 25 to 50 pages. And if you're paying an attorney $10 a page to read, you're not going to get very good advice. Okay, they charge $400 an hour, a decent attorney, not to read an entire contract like that and give you any decent advice. So vet your vendors and just know that most of this is contractual, but otherwise, great advice, guys. Great boots on the ground advice on what it's really like out there. I think you guys knocked it out of the park. Great job.
Well, Randy, thanks again for sponsoring this class, and thank you for all you do for the association. We see you out everywhere, and it definitely doesn't go unnoticed. So thanks for all your hard work for making this a better industry. With that, Chandra, Marcelo, do you have any final words before we send our friends off?
No, I would just say that, I hope you find it, I hope if anybody's still watching, I mean, I hope that I'm sorry, there's a question there. What's the question?
Yeah, the question is, have you come across a new development that tells the buyer to offer highest and best?
Well, I've seen developments revise their pricing over the past couple of weeks. So have I told them to offer highest and best? No, but typically the sales agent, I mean, if they're getting a lot of activity, they'll tell me, Marcelo, look, this is the last penthouse we have left. The other one already just went under contract. I highly recommend that your buyer, if they're interested, they come in at close to asking, because they're not, we're not too negotiable. So, but that really depends on the relationship. Your buyer can still do whatever they want. They can present and request the following things, but it's just like what Chandra said on her side. It depends on the situation and what's going on. If it's a very hot property, then yeah, you're not going to have as much leverage as a buyer to get better terms. But if it comes down to timing, and if you time it right, you can not only get a better price, but you might even negotiate better terms, better scheduling on the deposits. You can negotiate for the developer fee to be not necessarily waived, but they'll throw in as a credit that will cover it. So it depends on what's going on, and that's just a matter of finding opportunity and timing the market right, as you should, as a customer and as a realtor.
Yeah, when it comes to that, the same way sometimes we have to change our strategies, when dealing with resale, it's the same thing with new construction. It really just depends on what's going on in the market.
Yeah.
There's a couple people asking if this will be recorded. Again, we don't send out the recordings. The recording of this will be in miamilive.com and on Miami Realtors YouTube channel, so that you guys can watch again anytime at your convenience.
But going back to parting words, like I said, I hope you found the information useful. It wasn't really, when I started this business, I started in 2012, and it wasn't actually until 2019 that I got involved in new development, just because I didn't think it was a market that I wanted to get to know. And it turned out that I was actually very wrong. You have to know new development to truly understand all aspects of the market, in my opinion. You have to know what those units are going for, and you're selling yourself short if you don't also know how to sell these properties. Because if you learn how to do it, and if you learn how to do it well, not only is it a very exciting, but it can also be a very rewarding aspect of being a realtor down here in South Florida. You're going to have the chance, knowing these skills is going to allow you, especially if you work in my area, to really work with some of the best fellow professionals in our industry. You'll get to work with some of the best architecture that's out there in the world. Yesterday I was looking at a presentation for UNA, and I didn't know until yesterday that Gordon Gill and Adrian Smith, the architects for UNA, are the same architects that did the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, which is the tallest skyscraper in the world. So, and that's just one of the many other developments out there. So, jump in the pool, get wet, splash around a little bit, and see, what you can find.
We all love a pool party, Marcelo. One last question. How is a CDD different than an HOA?
So
in terms of the governing body?
Yeah, HOA is a governing body, and it's basically there to enforce the rules and deed restrictions within the community. And a CDD basically handles or pays for the infrastructure. Okay. So two completely different things. Sometimes you'll have a property that has CDD tax but no HOA, and vice versa, or both. So yeah. Okay.
Hey everybody, this was fantastic. This was a great class, and just to show you, it didn't drop off at all throughout the whole class. So we had a very engaged audience today. Thanks for your extra time. It went a little over an hour, but I think it was worth your time. And if you aren't a YPN Pro member yet, this class was free today, but we do offer other classes that are $15, and they are free with the membership. If we have any poker fans in the audience, I'm begging with you, please sign up. I'll send you a link. I'll send everybody a link. I'm begging you, sign up if you like poker. We need about 4 signups to beat residential. And if we beat residential, we get a happy hour. I'll make this deal with people in this class and YPN pros only. We said the top 20, only the top 20 in the tournament would get in. But since you attended this class, we'll allow you, no matter how bad you do, to enter that happy hour if you sign up. So please, for the love of Jesus, help me out. All right, anyways, I'll send the link to everybody. Thank you so much for your time. Chandra, Marcelo, you were amazing as always. And go out and be great, guys, because if it's not us, it's going to be somebody else. And I like the people that I'm around with, and I want to see you succeed. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Give up.